You're listening to Black Op Radio.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Black Op Radio. In this segment, we're speaking to author Vince Palamara. Needs no introduction. Hello, Vince.
Oh, hello, Len. Thanks for having me on again. Love being on here, and thanks to all your listeners. Appreciate it.
Great. I did want to talk about a review that you have up, some other little things that are just keeping in touch with you. So first of all, where do people get a hold of you? I'll make links at the website, but one of them is going to be vincepalamara.com.
Yes.
Okay. And then do you have another site?
Yes, I do. It is, let me pull that up. It's http vincepalamarablogspot.com. That's like a Google blogger. So Vince Palamara Blogspot, and the other one's vincepalamara.com. And I also have my YouTube channel. In fact, if you just put Vince Palamara in Google, everything comes up. My Amazon page with 5 books, the YouTube channel, the 2 major blogs, and several other things, my Internet Movie Database page, and so on.
Yeah, and I think over the last year, maybe not so much right just in the last few months, but maybe over COVID and that, there was quite a few good videos, lengthy videos that came out from your channel. So a lot of people were talking about them.
Yeah, I went crazy. That was 2 things good came from COVID was that I concentrated on a 5th book. I had no idea I was going to write a 5th book. I ended up doing it during that time. And then I also went nuts on my YouTube channel. I used to only upload like a couple videos a year from between 2007 when it began up to like 2019. 2020 on, hundreds and hundreds of video uploads. It was ridiculous. And yeah, the reaction's been really good, and it's getting that information out there because a lot of other channels have gone under. A lot of the other videos have gone under or hard to find, or they weren't presented in their full length. They weren't remastered, etc. Plus, I had a lot of unique individual stuff I put up there too. So yeah, it's good to be.
Here's one of the good things I appreciate about you. There are lots of people from every walk of life that had an interest in the case, and they start doing research, and then pretty soon they're contributing to it. Now, it's never been a case that I had to say, oh, I have a big disagreement, or I agree, or, Zapruder film, or the man in the doorway. You go about offering your research, and people either agree or disagree with you. It's kind of like that with a John Armstrong. Some people disagree with him, but he just offers his research. You specialize in the Secret Service. So, Mantic and Aguilar, other people are in medical evidence more. So you get these people who have a genuine interest, and they're not trying to make constant arguments or I'm right or my way the highway, and
yeah.
That's one thing I get when I'm reading a book by you or watching one of your videos. Here, you're trying to say, here's what we know right now, and maybe a year from now we know more. Well, that's what I'm saying I appreciate from you.
Oh, I really appreciate that, Len. Thanks a lot. Yeah, I've always tried to keep an open mind. I have a very open mind. I'm not wedded to any theory. And as we've known, I've said it multiple times, but for a few short months in 2007, I was swayed to, please forgive me, the lone nutter side a little bit. I still believe there was multiple conspiracies at the time to kill Kennedy, but I thought somehow, some way, a lone nut might have beat the conspiracies to the punch. So I wasn't totally far gone. But what that shows is when I snapped out of it a few months later, so we're talking, 16 years ago now. But the point being is I have a very open mind. I'm not like religiously like a cult. It's my theory. It's my way of the highway. I see all sides of the arguments, and I see the good, the bad, what we know, what we'll probably never know, what we'll never agree to. So I see the limitations of historical research in general and on this topic in particular, because a lot of people passed away. There's a lot of people out there with specialties, a lot of people with theories, and we have a natural human tendency to have our own biases. I mean, even me, come on, let's face it. I had a fascination with the Secret Service that transferred to the Kennedy assassination. So unlike some people that probably just don't even give the Secret Service a second thought, I'm like looking at the newsreels of Kennedy, and I'm looking past the shoulder. Oh, there's Jerry Bain, there's this agent, there's Clint Hill, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there you go. That's a bias in itself. So, yeah.
Yeah, I even forgot about that. But I'll say this: it's an attribute for someone to say I was wrong about something, and we should really admire that for the people who say, look, I've read, for instance, Bugliosi's book or something like that, and he makes some good points in that. And then over a couple of months, people write into you or whatever and say, but he says this, but it can't be true, and let me show you. And then so many people offer what should be in good research, like maybe Spartacus and, some of these other, but they're just, we're not trying to start a mud-flinging war. We're trying to say, here's a bunch of circumstances. What do you make of this? And between the community, we say, well, it must be this, it must be this. And yeah, the case isn't solved. But if you have an honest interest, and from time to time people are wrong about something, or they learn more. I didn't know that then. Now that I have this piece of new information, some new documents are released, I'm going to have to augment my point of view.
Yes, I've augmented mine for the better, actually. Rather than being wet blankets or raining on my parade, a lot of the file releases from the Assassination Records Review Board, and especially the treasure trove of digitized photographs, not only just from the JFK Library, films and photos, but just from John Q. Citizen and all points in between the library and organizations. There has been so much released in the last 5, 10, 15 years that was never available before as far as films and photos go. And it's like vast. It's amazing, all the motorcade footage. It's amazing, all the newspaper.com releases of old newspapers who are long out of print, long and forgotten. And again, it used to just be, back in the days of old, like in the 90s into the early millennium, it used to just be, there's plenty of film of Kennedy's inaugural parade in Dallas and very little in between. Now that problem's gone. We have thousands of films, thousands of photos, so we can really, truly weigh and assess what did and did not happen in Dallas rather than guesswork. And it's the same thing with the Assassination Records Review Board. It took a few years. It took a while to really mine that, to go through that. Those releases, they were the mid-late 90s, but it took, and there was obviously more recent ones, but people like Jim DiEugenio did God's work, amazing work in his books and his articles on Kennedy's and King and so on and so forth. And it really, obviously the new Oliver Stone documentary, which is fabulous. You have all that out there, and it's really it went from like John Newman once said, the days of theorizing are over. The whelming, after you get past Sylvia Maher and Harold Weisberg and that, and a couple other people, a lot of the work from that point on was theory driven, because we had a lack of information. We didn't have all these films and photos, so we speculated. We didn't have all these documents, so we speculated, and so on and so forth. But now those days are over, and that brings us up to now. And just like, I admit that I was wrong one time. There was a time I briefly kind of retired from the case recently, not totally retired, but kind of was just burned out. And it's just the people dragged me back, man. What it was no joke. I actually even stopped putting stuff on YouTube for a while. I was just really burned out. I think it was work related. That's another issue. Just kind of like work was burning me out, so I was kind of burned out of the case. And I uploaded a few videos, and they got thousands of views, tons of comments, and people write me every day. And they've got me interested again, because it's like the people will not, and I mean this in a good way, the people will not let this rest, man. Whether I wanted to rest or not, it's like no rest for the wicked. They're coming after me like crazy. And it's like, so it kind of got, maybe rejuvenated about everything. And so here we go. If you want, Len, we can talk about those 2 books that I mentioned recently that are coming out. Let me know if you want to get into that. Yeah.
Well, just as of March 10th, 2023, you had Secret Service agent Paul Landis. He has a new book coming out, and you got the headline, Beware. So that's what I think people might want to know, what insight you have, why we should be wary.
Yes. Well, after the Gerald Blaine nonsense from, going on 13 years ago now, time flies, where Gerald Blaine came out, and, we'll make his story very quick because we've already plumbed that a few times in past shows, but just to get everybody up to speed to talk about Paul Landis. Well, Paul Landis was one of actually quite a few, maybe we'll go to several agents that Gerald Blaine spoke to for his book, The Kennedy Detail. And Gerald Blaine's book was an attempt to whitewash the Secret Service's failure on November 22nd, 1963, and also tacitly put the blame on President Kennedy, who's dead and can't defend himself. And I debunked all that through my own books and my review on Kennedy's and King and videos. But the thing about Paul Landis was, this gets right into his book. His book is coming out in October 2023. It's called The Final Witness. And the funny thing, the title is a joke, because he's not the final witness. A lot of them passed away, but there's still quite a few still living. And then he goes, a Kennedy Secret Service agent breaks his silence after 60 years, and that's a total joke. Not only did he have, reports that he submitted to the Warren Commission. Okay, he lives in the Ohio area near Cleveland. Well, he did press interviews in the late 80s for the 25th anniversary. Again, he contributed to Gerald Blaine's best-selling New York Times best-selling book in 2010, and was also on the documentary that was shown several times on television. And he's also done other news interviews in the last 5 years or so. So this whole thing about breaks of silence for 60 years, that's a joke. But the central thing, but we can get back. All people might say, well, it's Vince, come on, that's just book hype. You're just trying to hype the book. The Final Witness, hey, he breaks the silence. Oh, that's not that big of a sin. And we could say, okay, maybe the big scheme of things that's minor. However, this was buried in Gerald Blaine's book, and I think it's going to be in big star-studded neon lights and big billboards for his book. That Paul Landis is one of, as a lot of researchers know, is one of the champions of a shot coming from the front. Now, he has 2 reports, okay? One dated November 27th, and so this is actually 5 days after the assassination, and then one dated 3 days later, November 30th. In both reports, he states unequivocally a shot came from the front. Paul Landis was riding in the follow-up car. He was riding on the running board behind Jack Reddy, who was behind JFK on that side. Okay, so that's amazing news. Well, in Gerald Blaine's book, it's buried in a paragraph. It basically says that, Paul Landis, I'm paraphrasing, Paul Landis used to believe the shot may have come from the front, but he realizes with the advent of time, it must have been echoes. He had to have been mistaken. Well, it's obvious from this book that he's going to accentuate that even further in probably many pages to try to claim that it was all just a mistake. But poor Paul Landis, not only does he have the 2 reports, they're in the Warren Commission volumes, volume 18. Well, this is very few people know this. This is pretty amazing. But the Haas Select Committee contacted him in the 70s, in February 1979 to be exact, right when they were gearing up for their final report. Literally, like, everything was done. The investigation was over, and they were going to finally finalize the report. And I guess they got on their Watts line and made some final calls here and there to try to iron stuff out. And wait till you hear this. The House Select Committee interviewed Paul Landis on February 17th, 1979, and they noted, and it's on the House Select Committee report, page 89 and 606, and it's referencing Landis's interview. It says, Landis confirms the accuracy of his statement to the Warren Commission. Now, obviously, they meant not the Warren Commission, the body, but the report he submitted to it. Again, Landis confirmed the accuracy of his statement when he spoke to the House Select Committee in the dying days when they were writing the report on February 17, 1979. So not only do we have the 2 reports he wrote, but very inconveniently for old Paul Landis, 16 years later, 15 plus years, we'll say, he said, yes, my reports, I stand by my report. Okay. And again, in 2010, he does that little buried in Gerald Blaine's book about how, he must have been just a mistake, an echo from the overpass. Well, Paul Landis has another major problem. He also does not believe the single bullet theory. Paul Landis and Clint Hill together both came out in the same year, 2016, albeit in separate avenues. Clint Hill came out in his book, 5 Presidents, released that year in 2016. And Paul Landis was interviewed by, it was a Cleveland, Ohio newspaper. It might have been the Plain Dealer. But in any event, he came out and he said that the Warren Commission blew it with the single bullet report, the single bullet theory. So you had 2 gentlemen that don't, again, it's just like John Connally, Governor Connally, for many, many years, for basically all his life from the assassination to his death in 1993, just about 30 years later. Connally always said, the single bullet theory, that's not true. Another shot hit me. But he also said Oswald acted alone. He never understood the contradiction there. Well, Clint Hill basically does the same thing, but Clint Hill also said the back of the head was gone of JFK and the wound was in the back, in the shoulder, not the back of the neck. And then he also denies the single bullet theory. He never denounced it before. He never made a mention about it until 5 Presidents came out. And he said, I believe the Warren Commission, except for one detail. I do not believe the single bullet theory. And it's like, wow, you cannot have it both ways. About the single bullet theory, Oswald's or whoever fired the rifle was not the sole assassin. We have a conspiracy. And same with Paul Lance. And not only do we have Paul Lance in 1979, it was literally little old me. I don't want to, brag or just by default. No one knew about this even though it's in the House Select Committee final report, it's buried in a footnote, but there it's referencing this outside contact report. Paul Lance, he confirms the two wars. So for 16 plus years, he believed his reports, what he said. Now here we are in 2023, and he's going to claim otherwise. And it's just one of those things where it really infuriates me that these guys come out with these memoirs. Now it's going to be 60 years later, and Paul Landis is not exactly Clint Hill. I don't know how much his book is going to be hyped, how well it's going to sell. I don't know. Probably will do decent because he's a former agent. If he gets on Fox News, Newsmax, one of these channels, maybe he'll do really well with the book. But I could just see it all now. He's going to parade the fact that I was mistaken, but not one journalist, no news reporter is going to mention not only about the two reports, but more importantly, they're not going to know about the House Select Committee 1979 outside contact report where Paul Landis is, saying that my reports stand. And also, they're not going to make heads or tails about the single bullet theory, rebuttal, not believing the single bullet theory, and they're not going to realize, the ramifications of Paul Landis saying that the single bullet theory isn't true. And again, the whole thing, I get to see it all now. They're going to say, he breaks his silence for the first time in 60 years. The final witness is the title of his book. And again, he's not the final witness. There's several people that we know of in the Plaza still alive, Mary Mormon, the Newman family. And now I'll concede other than Clint Hill and the Secret Service follow-up card, him and Clint Hill were it. And you have to go back to like the press bus people like Robert McNeil, people like that are still alive. So it's definitely dwindled. But the point is, he's not the final one. And more importantly, he's spoken about this for years. But it's a shame, just like at the 50th anniversary, all these books coming out. You had Clint Hill's books at that time, especially. Trying to just say, oh, it's Oswald, get a life, and they're mistaken. It's another thing, too. It's really infuriates me about Clint Hill. From 1963, literally the day it happened, up to, about 5 years ago or so, he was always putting his hand on the back of his head. Now the son of a gun is putting his hand more on the side of the head. For the first time ever, it's amazing. He's trying to make it more like a side wound. Somebody must have finally got to him and said, Clint, you realize what you're saying goes against official history. Somebody must have prepped him, maybe his wife, his co-author wife. Somebody must have got to him, and he's now, it was on the side here. But we have documentaries up to including 2013. We got him countless times in print in his own books, for God's sake, multiple books. He wrote, 3 books? Actually, no, I take it back. He wrote 4 books. Oh, I forgot. He came out with a book last year, in fact. I almost forgot completely about it. It was another cash grab book like his second book. His first book is actually good if you take away a few pages about the assassination. It was about Jacqueline Kennedy. It was harmless, read book, Reader's Digest, kind of fun. The second book was just a cash grab. It was a picture book for the 50th anniversary. Third one was 5 presidents, his life with, going from Eisenhower up to Ford, I believe it was. And, it was okay. And this last book was totally like Mrs. Kennedy and Me, the first book with pictures. And I even forget the title of it now. It's really not even worth getting, but he made a mint on it like he did in all his other books because he's on Simon & Schuster, the biggest company in the world. They get all the major networks. They get all the print media, internet. So the guy's guaranteed X amount of sales even before the book is released. And, they've been on a campaign to keep blaming Kennedy for ordering the agents off the car, where Clint Hill was one of those guys that said in his report that he never heard the president personally say anything like that. And he got the information from the administrative offices of the White House detail, which is Floyd Boring, because Gerald Bain was on vacation at that time and he had nothing to do with ordering agents off the car. And I've explored that many times before, that the buck stops of Floyd Boring, the assistant special agent in charge of the White House detail, was the planner of the Texas trip. And that's where Clint Hill got that idea that Kennedy ordered off the car. He got it from Floyd Boring, not from Kennedy himself. Twice in his report, Clint Hill wouldn't name Floyd Boring, but he was under oath to Arlen Specter of the Warren Commission. He admitted it was Floyd Boring who told him this. Yet when I spoke to Floyd Boring, as we famously know, Floyd Boring adamantly denied that was true. And he said, President Kennedy was a very nice man, very cooperative, never interfered with our actions at all. In 1976, he told the JFK Library the same thing, and that was only released because Bill Adams and I got the JFK Library to release the oral history from 1976 in the year 1999. And in there, Floyd Boring, who protected Presidents FDR up to LBJ, said, of all the presidents I served, JFK was the most cooperative. Oh, wow, that kind of shoots the theory about him ordering guys off the car and doing this, doing that. And all these agents, like I've explored in the past, all these agents told me in letters, emails, on the phone, and non-agents who don't have an axe to grind, like Dave Powers and Congressman Sam Gibbons, who rode a foot away from Kennedy in Tampa, all said the same thing. President Kennedy never ordered the agents to do anything, never ordered them off the car. And here's the amazing thing. Even if somebody out there thinks that, well, Vince, isn't the president, the leader of the free world, the commander-in-chief? Wouldn't his pecking order being slightly ahead of a little lowly Secret Service agent? Not when it comes to his security, he isn't. As Presidents Truman, Johnson, and Clinton have all said, the Secret Service is the only boss the President of the United States truly has. It's not the other way around. When it comes to his security, the Secret Service is boss, and there's so much evidence of this. Not only is this in books before the assassination written, also an Associated Press story that went out across the country, November 15th, 1963, the Secret Service can overrule even the president, where his personal security is involved. It goes on. And then Clint Hill, ironically, with Gerald Blaine right by his side in 2010 in the 6th floor museum, said on video, well, President Kennedy, he can tell you what he wants done, and he can tell you certain things, but that doesn't mean what you have to do it. You don't have to do it. What we used to do was always agree with the president, and then we do what we felt was best anyway, which is evidenced by the fact that Clint Hill got on the back of the car 4 separate times on Main Street. Now, albeit he rushed back to the fob car, but I don't know, like a minute or so right before they got to the turn, Houston, and then from Houston to Elm, he's not there. And for years, he harbored so much guilt. He was crying on, 60 Minutes, crying for many years after on documentary saying, I should have been there. It's my fault. I'll live with that to my grave. If I was only a second faster, we should have been on the back of the car. He's in print saying that. We should have been on the back of the car. He's saying he's not blaming Kennedy. Then all of a sudden, when I sent that 22-page certified letter to him in the summer of 2005, he started to change his tune. And that's when Gerald Blaine also came out of retirement, wrote his book. And Gerald Blaine was a nobody agent. Nobody knew who he was. Everyone in the world knows who Clint Hill was. But Gerald Blaine, B-L-A-I-N-E, not to be confused with the special agent in charge of the White House detail, Gerald Bain, who's B-E-H-N. Gerald Blaine, only somebody like me knew who he was. He was an obscure agent who was on the Texas trip, but not in Dallas. He flew to Austin and was waiting for Kennedy when Kennedy was assassinated. He only served 5 years. He was a nobody agent, but he came out with a book on Simon & Schuster. And the book was nothing but filled with lies, blaming Kennedy over and over again. And he mentions me on 2 pages about naming me. He's a self-described Secret Service expert and all this other stuff. And I guess for legal reasons, he wanted to name me. He was afraid I was going to sue him or something. I don't know. But the point being, when people read the Kennedy detail, they go, wow, Vince, you can tell it's Val protests too much. And he's blaming Kennedy like crazy. And the thing is, not only did Kennedy never order him off the car, even if he wanted to, they would have ignored him, as Clint Hill said on video. And more importantly, the Secret Service was the boss. So they'd say, Mr. President, sir, you can go fly a kite or something maybe more polite than that. They did what they felt was best anyway. Again, evidenced by the fact that Clint Hill got on the back of the car 4 separate times on Main Street on November 22nd, 1963. Oh, Clint Hill has another whopper he's been saying very recently. It's really disturbing. He's saying, and he said it on a television documentary, and I think he said this in print, maybe in his 4th book or 3rd book. He said that President Kennedy looked back at me a couple of times, and I rode on the back of the car, and I could tell basically that President Kennedy did not like me there, but there was nothing he could do at that point. All the films and photos and eyewitness testimony, etc. There's no evidence that President Kennedy ever looked around. I've never seen a single photo or film of him ever turning around. And more importantly, you couldn't, especially with that bad back of his. He's facing forward and a little bit to the side, the way of the people. He's not turning around. He's not giving a rat's you-know-what, some agent being on the back step of the car, even a relatively more modern agent, Dan Emmett, who's an author, laughed at that and said, oh, presidents have too much in their minds to think about what we're doing. They're thinking about, the crises in the world. They're thinking about their speech. They're trying to go through their speech in their mind and memorize it, which he was probably doing with the trademark they're approaching. And they're waving to the people, giving them attention. The last thing they're thinking of is, I wonder if Clint Hill's riding in the back of a car. Naughty boy, he shouldn't be there. And last but not least, we'll get back to the book and the other book, but just real quick, and I brought this up many times, agents being on the back of the car did not obscure the view of Kennedy, which I've shown on my YouTube channel and in still photos as well. The agents on the back of the car and all the eyes of the people in these crowds are transfixed on Kennedy. There's enough room, there's a good, 5-6 feet or so, that they can see him just fine. My God, FDR and Truman had agents on the car right beside the president, right beside him, and the president's never protested. The people could see the president just fine. When they see a celebrity, they don't care about the bodyguards. Hello, just like any celebrity, you can think of Taylor Swift or a famous actor or actress. Same thing with the president. And these agents were a little further back on the Lincoln Continental holding the hand grab. So this is all an attempt to try to sway their guilt, their failure. Oswald or no Oswald, conspiracy or no conspiracy. If these men would have did their normal protective duty, Kennedy lives. So that's Paul Landis's book. But another thing is there's another Paul. I call a YouTube video I've just made called Attack of the Pauls, because there's Paul Landis and another book by a Paul Brandis. Paul Brandis is a journalist who wrote somewhat of a bestseller, a book about Jacqueline Kennedy. Seems like a harmless book. He seems like a relatively nice guy. He contacted me a couple times, but shades of Gerald Posner hoodwinking Harold Weisberg. Gerald Posner never said what his book was about. In fact, he actually hinted it was going to be about the mob did it, and he hoodwinked Harold and came out saying Oswald did it, get a life, everybody. Well, when I spoke to Paul Brandis and corresponded, he never intimated his book was going to be an Oswald Act Alone book. In fact, he kind of gave hints that it was going to be some blockbuster explosive book. It gave me the impression it was going to be another pro-conspiracy book, and it comes out now. And the title of his book, amazing, get this is rich, Countdown to Dallas, The Incredible Coincidences, Routines, and Blind Luck that brought John F. Kennedy and Lee Harvey Oswald together. It's just crazy. It's insane. And it's he's saying, and it really got my ire up. This is the book description on Amazon. The book's not even going to be out yet. His book, Paul Brandis' book's not coming out until April. So next month, April 2023. Paul Landis is not till October of this year. But Paul Brandis says here, the so-called crime of the century, the assassination of President John F. Kennedy, was almost preordained to happen. Like all presidents for decades before him, JFK played elusive security, open cards, Secret Service agents at a distance, and a desire to be seen. Yet conspiracy buffs are certain the security setup on November 22nd was unusual and suspicious. It wasn't. Now, that son of a gun, I sent him so many films and photos of motorcades that he was impressed with, and I'm showing him agents on the back of the car, near the car. I'm showing him many motorcycles flanking the car, far more than are in Dallas, since we know agents were on the back of the car during the assassination. I'm showing him the military aides frequently rode in the car with Kennedy, the fast speed of the cars, the press photographers, flatbed truck or trucks, plural, in front of the car, oftentimes even a live television feed. I'm showing the police and or military line the streets facing the crowd. I'm showing the rooftops being guarded, all these newspaper articles and Secret Service documents and testimony showing this. A lot of this is before the assassination, real matter-of-factly. Actually, in a book that was made for young adults that came out the year before the assassination, it was written with the help of the Secret Service, chiefly, no pun intended, Chief James Rowley and Chief Inspector Michael Trina, who wrote the Secret Service manual, says matter-of-factly in the book, whenever the president is to appear in a parade, agents or police line the streets and also guard building rooftops until the president's party passes. Again, they guard the rooftops until the president's party passes. And also that year, in 1962, but in 1963, I went on newspapers.com and found a whole bunch of articles from Kennedy's trips to Milwaukee, Nashville, Tennessee, you name it, foreign countries, and they're saying about helicopters guarding the routes and the buildings, and how police are going to man their rooftop stations until President Kennedy passes them. And you go to San Diego, I'll point this out specifically because there's one lone nutter who was a field day trying to say there's no difference between Dallas and these other trips. Look at this San Diego trip, for example. He makes an embarrassing mistake. There's many Marines lining the route where Kennedy's motorcade is. There's also happens to be two flatbed trucks of still motion photographers in front of Kennedy, including the live television feed that's making this video possible for this lone nutter to lampoon me. And the narrator even says, wow, we have Marines stationed every 5 yards. They're there to keep the people back, and they're facing the crowds, not Kennedy. There's Marines, again, every 5 feet all over the place, both sides of the road. And building rooftops were guarded because building rooftops were always guarded. FDR, Truman, Eisenhower, and Kennedy. And no, this is not hyperbole. This is not Monday morning quarterbacking. I also used to think, oh, they probably just did that as a response to the assassination after the fact, until I could not believe my eyes. Now, I go dredging newspapers.com and finding all these old articles about, the FDR, Truman, Eisenhower eras where building rooftops were guarded. But more importantly, the Kennedy era, 61 to 63, including Tampa, 4 days before, 28-mile motorcade, longer than Kennedy's Dallas trip by it's almost 3 times as long. The Dallas motorcade was between 10 and 11 miles long. Well, the one in Tampa was 28 miles long. They guarded every multi-story building rooftop with sheriff's guards armed with the teeth with Thompson submachine guns, high-powered rifles, and their pistols. I got that not only from documents, but more importantly, I spoke to the lead motorcycle officer for Tampa, Russell Groover, and he, matter of factly, told me in multiple communications, it's in my books, that every multi-story building rooftop, we guard them, made sure no buildings or windows, were opened and no untoward activities occurred. Now you might say to yourself, okay, Vin, that is awesome, but what about single dwellings? What about that? Like a ranch building? No problem. Not only were they going at faster rates of speeds when they encountered those kind of buildings, but more importantly, military police or regular police were lining the streets and facing the crowds. They had police officers in undercover fashion in the crowds themselves. So one-story dwellings were no problem, but any multi-story buildings, those were the ones that were guarded. So when people also try to say, hey, Vince, there's no way they could have guarded all those building rooftops, they didn't. They only guarded the multi-story ones. They didn't bother with the ranch-style ones because those were covered from the eye-to-eye, being on the street level with the military and or agents and or police. And they did that just enough to have a presence on there. They also, which if they could, if it was feasible, to give manifests of employees, if it was feasible, see if there was anybody dangerous, anybody that they wanted to make sure keep away. So obviously, even if you believe Oswald acted alone, the vast minority of people that believe Oswald acted alone, well, we know Hosty knew he was on the route. So even if you take that tack, Hosty did nothing to tell the Secret Service, hey, this guy is on the Texas School Book Depository. Hey, what about that? So it could have been prevented just from that, just that standpoint alone. That was a standard procedure. So that's why I think it's going to be more Secret Service after the fact, decades later. Paul Lance is going to come to Gerald Blaine's rescue and Clint Hill's rescue. In fact, all three are thicker than thieves. They've been to not only Association of Former Agents of Secret Service Association meetings, but they've also met with the director of the Secret Service. They have pictures of them glad handing him. So it might be an old story, but it's a current event in some respects, because I think the current Secret Service does not like the embarrassment of the Kennedy assassination and anybody trying to cast aspersions on the agents of the past, and that's where that's at. But Paul Brandis is going to do this thing where he's going to try to say Oswald acted alone. It was all a bunch of big coincidences, and there was no problems with security, which some lone nutters try to throw at me every once in a while until I shut them up with my hours-long videos of past motorcades with Kennedy, and you can see, again, agents on the back of the car, many motorcycles, fast speeds, and I show all the evidence of Secret Service documents and newspaper articles from the time and books and whatnot written before the assassination. One of them was written by, again, Michael Torina wrote, he was responsible, I should say, for a passage in the book called The United States Secret Service that came out. Walter Bowen and Harry Neal, former agent, in 1960. And it matter-of-factly says, and again, it was contributed by Michael Torina, again, who wrote the Secret Service manual, that whenever presidents appear in a parade, agents or police guard building rooftops. Again, 3 years before the assassination. In fact, when that book came out, Eisenhower was still president. So there you go, Len, just in a little synopsis there. Both these books are going to come out there again. It's really been a real uphill battle with the mainstream media and books ever since 2013. They're doing their darndest to try to shut this down and say Oswald acted alone and that the Secret Service was not responsible in any way. So that's where we're at. So 2023, 60 years later, and we're still fighting this mainstream media assault. Yeah.
Well, thank goodness that the media is breaking up, thanks to like Black Op Radio, the podcasts like Joe Rogan and Jimmy Dore, that more and more people are going to some alternate area for information.
Yes. Thank God for you guys.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And they're shooting themselves in the foot. You'd think with CNN, I didn't realize how bad it was until we dropped it, and then like after 6 months, I realized, it's just the same as Fox, or MSNBC.
Yeah, bad.
It's. But the thing is, people they want to hear the truth, and I don't know that. How bad would it be if you found out the truth about the JFK assassination? Do you think America would really crumble? What if they said, we found out that vindictive Allen Dulles ordered a crew of his supporters, and they pulled this off,
Yeah, I agree. You know what it is, Len? I think what it is which I explained in my latest book, Honest Answers, which pays homage to so many people before me and people that are running currently with me, whether it's the late Mark Lane, Harold Weisberg, or currently alive and well Jim DiEugenio, who's fantastic, and James Douglas, and so many other people. Here's why, to answer your question directly, why you don't think, the situation is they're not coming out admitting there was some kind of conspiracy. Here's why I think. One of the other reasons people don't think about it is, I think, as I prove in my latest book, we can prove there was a conspiracy. But people like sound bites. They like Perry Masons. They like CSIs. They want a definitive answer. Okay, you can prove a conspiracy. Well, then who did it? And we have a good idea, very good suspicion it was Allen Dulles. But can we go into a court of law and prove it? No. We have suspicions and we have things, but if there was a judge and this was on, I don't know, it's not court TV, whatever it is now, when they have this, live trials like the Murdaugh trial recently, it wouldn't stand up in court as far as, and actually present that someone did it. We can prove that there was a conspiracy like Jim Garrison did in the late 60s, but to prove who did it, and I think that's why it goes around in a circle. It's unsatisfactory, and that's why it keeps the mystery and it keeps this whole case alive, is because we can prove a conspiracy. We can't prove specifically who did it. And I know so many people say, well, that's why I wrote the book. Part of the reason is like, hey, Vince, I want to know who killed Kennedy. I have so many, amateur people that's the first thing out of their mouth. Then they'll make you just want to throw up. They'll say they think the agent in the fob car did it, or they think the driver turned around and shot Kennedy, because they want a quick, convenient, sexy kind of answer. Hey, George Hickey did it, case closed. Or Bill Greer turned around and shot him, case closed. There's no truth to that whatsoever, but it satisfies them to a point. And when you can't give them the satisfaction, it's like, yeah, okay. It's like it runs around in a circle. Now, the good news is, for many years, you can argue, some people could argue, maybe we couldn't even prove a conspiracy, that it was all a bunch of theories and it wasn't grounded in documents and witness testimony. It was just like dribs and drabs. Like, we did a brilliant job of debunking the Warren Commission. Brilliant job of debunking the Warren Commission. For many years, it wasn't more than that. It was always that case of, we'll never know what really happened. I don't believe Oswald had alone, but we're never going to know. Well, we've passed into the second phase. We can prove there's a conspiracy. But will we ever get to the third and final stage of Allen Dulles did it, this person did it, the Cabells did it with Allen Dulles and a few other CIA agents, of ex-officials like Cord Meyer and that, whatever. At this late date, I don't think so. And I also think, ironically, we're never going to agree. Here's the other subplot. Even if indulge the fantasy, wow, they're coming out naming a specific person who was involved, and this seems very well grounded in evidence and testimony. It's not like Roscoe White or this, that, and the other. It's like, wow, this seems really believable and plausible. You're going to get people who aren't going to believe it. Hey, that's not my theory. That can't be right. It was the mob. No, come on. It was J. Edgar Hoover. It was the right.
But you know what? I think it's up to the individual to make up their own mind. Because,
you're right.
You must be satisfied with some of the things you found out already. So when you first started out, you go, I wonder, if I'll ever know. And then you get comfortable. You say, of course, right? And,
yes.
And then everything that the Warren Commission said, that's not true. And I'm confident of that. And then also you could say, well, Commission Exhibit 399. Yeah, now that I've examined everything, there's no way that happened. And you get more and more comfortable about, I can say what didn't happen. I might not be able to, there might not be anything on paper that says that, like, Allen Dulles, Ed Lansdale, other people, you know what I mean? You won't find that on paper. Then you just have to go, well, I'm comfortable that I found out enough that I have an idea. It's like you could say about this the bombing of that pipeline between Germany and Russia, and that,
Yes.
and whether you believe what's his name, but you know what I mean. Like you can say, okay, right, I know who did it. Now, what we're going to make of it, right? So, Kennedy was killed. I say he was removed by his enemies. And if you want to study who his enemies were, you get behind the military complex. Imagine that speech, given today. There's Eisenhower on his way out saying, I was president and I learned certain things, and every American should be very wary of what's on the horizon.
The military-industrial complex. Beware the power of the military-industrial complex. Yep. Yeah.
I can't even imagine any president having the fortitude to say that. Yeah. Testicular
right.
fortitude.
Yeah,
whatever.
You're right. Well, even now, look, we're having Trump and Biden both. They release these file releases, but then they won't release them all. We still have the autopsy photos and X-rays, under seal, and only certain stores. Now I'm hearing they're getting tougher with even so-called historians and people with a medical background. They're even getting, ever since Burke Marshall passed away, and whoever the new guy is, they're getting even tougher, that they rather would nobody look at them anymore. So it's getting really tough. But yeah, it has a lot to do with fortitude and that. Yeah.
Did you see that clip, the video clip from Judge Napolitano? No, he asked Trump. He said, "Listen, you told me you would release these files and you didn't. Now what gives before you retire, or your term is ended, you've got to release them." And he said on the phone to the judge, he said, "If you saw what I saw, you'd realize why we can never release them." And it was he goes, "What did you tell me?" And he goes, "I can't talk on an open phone, but I'll tell you one day."
Wow.
Yeah, I'll send you that link. It's because it's an anecdotal story, but then it kind of starts to, every piece fits more and more. That it's not Lee Oswald.
Yeah. Well, look at, there's so many people. Well, hey, I was there. I witnessed history in the summer of 1992. This is quoted in David Talbot's great book, Brothers, which I mentioned in a couple pages. But more importantly, I was a witness in summer 1992 to Al Gore and Bill Clinton, both running for president and vice president at the time. And somebody in the crowd, because the Oliver Stone movie, even though it was out X amount of months, it was in the cheap theaters at that point, but it was a home video bestseller. It was a hot topic, and everyone was talking about the release of the files and whatnot. And some lady in the crowd, and I was right there, said, "Do you believe there was a conspiracy for the release of these files?" And Al Gore was real adamant. He believed there was a conspiracy for the release of the files. Bill Clinton said, "I support what my future vice president just said." So he did an old Clinton thing, but he endorsed the idea of a conspiracy. But right when we get all excited about that, we know what he did a year later when he was president. He told Wolf Blitzer, "I am satisfied Oswald acted alone." So it's a long litany of presidents who are all excited about the files and have their own beliefs. Like Ronald Reagan supposedly believed the right wing had something to do with it, or maybe the Russians, depending on who he was interviewed by, but he never did anything with the files. The list goes on and on. We already know about George H.W. Bush and his son. And the list goes on, and even Obama. It took Joe Biden to finally pardon Abraham Bolden. It's just it's a hot topic. So to answer your question, even in another way, even though it's 2023, it's still a hot potato, because for the government and or the media to admit in a major breaking news development, yes, indeed, there was a conspiracy to kill Kennedy, I think it would still shake like the rafters of power even today in the media, and they had to admit they were wrong all these decades. And even for naive people who were just trying to worry about their checkbooks and all the other things going on in the world, it would probably shake the foundation to a point. I think we'd survive and get over it. We're a tough people. We survived 9/11 and world wars. We'd be okay. Yeah, but they would rather just err on, it was Oswald, get a life. That seems like the easiest thing to do. Just, it was Oswald. But I always tell people, I'm not so wet. I don't see conspiracies in my soup. I believe a lot of us lone assassins were lone assassins. Charles Guiteau, and Leon Czolgosz tried to kill McKinley. I believe Hinckley acted alone. We can go on and on and on. But in the interest of time, we're not going to go on and on and on. So I do not. This shocks people. I believe 9/11 was what we were told. I don't believe there was explosives in the building, none of that stuff. So no, I do not see conspiracies in my book. You know what? I'm not invested. If it was Oswald, and I don't believe it was, if it was Oswald acted alone, I have no thing. I'm not going to jump off a bridge. Oh my God, I was wrong. So I have no horse in the race. Now I know somebody's going to say, "Hey Vince, I see you profiting from 5 books, pal." Yeah, but I work for a living. I'm not making Clint Hill money. Clint Hill is making hundreds of thousands, and I've been told actually even the low millions, because all his books came out. Simon & Schuster, he got a healthy advance. He got movie and TV rights, even though the movies haven't seen the light of day yet, but you can still get the money. Each book has sold 200,000 plus copies. Cha-ching, he's made a ton of money. The real blood money, the real money makers are the lone nutters. Gerald Posner, Vince Bugliosi, Clint Hill, Gerald Blaine, David Bellin, the list goes on. And people like me, we're breaking even. Yes, I made some money for my books, but that was break even for all the years of research. And I've been working full time this whole time. I have a life. I have a wife. I'm paying rent. I don't live like, oh, you're profiting from conspiracy. Yeah, I am not profiting from my books. Trust me. So that's a long-winded way of saying I have no horse in the race like some people think I do. Like, you're part of the conspiracy cottage industry. That cracks me up so much. The real cottage industry is the anti-conspiracy cottage industry of, again, Gerald Blaine, Clint Hill, David Bellin, William Manchester, Jim Bishop. Those are the people that sold massive amounts of books, made massive amounts of money, received massive amounts of media coverage to the point the average person on the street knows a lot of those people's names. Unlike 99% of researchers are like, who is that? I never heard of that person.
Yeah, I heard Norman Mailer got a hefty, like $1 million.
Norman Mailer got a chunky. Yeah, he wasn't hurting for cash. Yeah, but he tried a little slip in there. He tried to make it sound like, Oswald, there's a remote chance he might have had help. So he tried to throw a little bone to people. But for years, he quietly thought there was a conspiracy. But, Oswald's ghost and the money was a talking, just like when Gerald Posner.
I know, it was Oswald's tale, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's the one. That's
right,
the one.
Yeah,
that's the one. Sorry. But yeah, I kind of forgot that book on purpose. But yeah. But the point being is, that's what makes me so mad. I want to scream from the rafters. The people, I'll just say it again real briefly. The people that are making the money are the people that believe Oswald acted alone. There's only a couple rare exceptions. I can think of 2. David Lifton, lifelong bachelor. He made money from his book. And also the rumors, he also got an inheritance from his parents. So he never had to work a day in his life. It was mainly because of his parents, not the book. He made a nice splash from his book, but that money didn't last forever. Look at these athletes making millions of dollars if they work for a living when they all dries away. Well, he didn't make millions from the book, trust me. And Harry Livingstone's the other one who made good money, but he was a lifetime bachelor. And he also came from a rich family and inherited some money from his father. So, so there's fine print, even the people that did well of their books. So it's very few on our side, and everybody. So this Paul Brannis has already had a best-selling book, and he's part of the White House press corps. He's done other books. He's been on TV and whatnot. Watch his book do very well for him, where people like me are on, and I say this with a smile on my face, I love them, trying days like a minor league publishing company, God bless them, and they're not Simon Schuster, they're not Macmillan, et cetera, et cetera. So it's an uphill battle. It's good. Now, thank God, now, as I always tell people, thank God if I was meant to be published, thank God I was published 2010 onward, because now we have Kindle, we have Amazon, online purchasing is a normal thing. There's many authors that, were published in the pre-Kindle days, pre-Amazon days, or at very least when Amazon was still considered like, I remember for years people were like, I'm not putting my credit card online buying anything. So it used to be, if your book wasn't in a bookstore, physical bookstore, it died. No one bought it but you and your parents. That was it. See, now it's great because people just have to put JFK Assassination in the Amazon search engine, and my book comes up, and they don't care if it's the Acme Publishing Company or Simon & Schuster, and my books sell every week. They're not selling like Clint Hill's book, mind you, but they're selling. They're out there, thank God. And I would wager if it wasn't for Kindle and Amazon, all 5 of my books would have died. And quite frankly, there wouldn't have been a second book or a third book, because the first book would have died and it'd be like, hey, Ben, can't afford to publish it, man. You didn't sell a dime. But what happened is, thank God for the internet, and especially Amazon, has really leveled the playing field to a point. Obviously, can't compete with the huge heavyweights, but for mom and pops out there across the world, Christmas gifts in general. They're selling every week, and that's good. It gets it out there, and it's kind of the alternative grassroots press times 100. At least it gets it out there to people, and this, that, and the other. And all my stuff online is for free. So I give out stuff so much for free, even more than I almost circumvent my books to a point, because people will say, Vince, I'd love to get your book. And I tell them about my YouTube channel, and you can tell they're like, oh, that's free. Okay, I'm going to go to your YouTube channel. Thanks, Vince. So but the point being, I'm just happy to have the information out there. So, and you're doing a great job too. It's so good to see Black Op Radio out there and, doing what you guys are doing too. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you. Well, we'll make links to your website, vincepalamara.com, and also to your blog spot. So look forward to anything there.
All right.
As I said, I'm going to be visiting John Armstrong. So I'll send you an email, and I'll keep you in touch with what's going on. And you were retired. Maybe you're coming out of retirement a bit.
I'm coming out. I'm back, baby. I'm back.
Okay. Well, I'd be glad to do something with you. So I'll let you know how that all goes.
That sounds good, man.
Okay. In the meantime, then, is there anything else that I didn't really bring up too much? I just wanted you to talk about these two.
Oh, I appreciate it.
Right. So anything else we should say before we wrap up?
No, I just say thanks again for having me. Thank you. And thank you all your listeners. I always get feedback being on the show from people saying, hey, I heard you on Black Op Radio. So you're reaching people, man. I really appreciate it. And thanks. We'll talk again. Sounds good, man.
All right. Thank you, Vince.
All right. Take care. Thanks.
Okay. Good night.
Bye.
You're listening to Black Op Radio.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Black Op Radio. In this segment, we are speaking to author Vince Palamara. Needs no introduction. Hello, Vince.
Oh, hello, Len. Thanks for having me on again. Love being on here, and thanks to all your listeners. Appreciate it.
Great. I did want to talk about a review that you have up, some other little things that are just keeping in touch with you. So first of all, where do people get a hold of you? I'll make links at the website, but one of them is going to be vincepalamara.com.
Yes.
Okay. And then do you have another site?
Yes, I do. It is, let me pull that up. It's http vincepalamarablogspot.com. That's like a Google blogger. So Vince Palamara blogspot, and the other one's vincepalamara.com. And I also have my YouTube channel. In fact, if you just put Vince Palamara in Google, everything comes up. My Amazon page with 5 books, the YouTube channel, the 2 major blogs, and several other things, my Internet Movie Database page, and so on.
Yeah, and I think over the last year, maybe not so much just in the last few months, but maybe over COVID and that, there was quite a few good videos, lengthy videos that came out from your channel. So a lot of people were talking about them.
Yeah, I went crazy. That was 2 things good came from COVID was that I concentrated on a 5th book. I had no idea I was going to write a 5th book. I ended up doing it during that time. And then I also went nuts on my YouTube channel. I used to only upload like a couple videos a year from between 2007 when it began up to like 2019. 2020 on, hundreds and hundreds of video uploads. It was ridiculous. And yeah, the reaction's been really good. And, just getting that information out there, because a lot of other channels have gone under. A lot of the other videos have gone under, or hard to find, or they weren't presented in their full length. They weren't remastered, etc. Plus, I had a lot of unique individual stuff I put up there too. So yeah, it's good to be,
here's one of the good things I appreciate about you. There are